Today, I'm joined by Ben Friedland, Vice Chairman at CBRE and Global Co-Head of the firm's Alternative Investments Practice. Over the course of his career, Ben has advised many of the world's leading hedge funds, private equity firms, and investment managers on their real estate strategy, completing more than 1,000 transactions along the way. At the intersection of finance, real estate, and long-term strategy, Ben has built a reputation as a trusted advisor to some of the most sophisticated institutions in the world. Today, we're going to talk about his career, what it takes to operate at the highest level in commercial real estate, and how the role of real estate is evolving for today's investment firms. Ben, welcome to Disrupt for Good. All right, Ben, thank you so much for joining me today on Disrupt for Good. I'm honored to have you here. Ben is the uncle of one of my very good friends, so I'm really excited to have him on here today. I've known him for a few years, and he's been a great mentor to me and others in real estate and other roles and aspirations that people have. So thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Dylan.
Thank you. So to start, you've spent more than 2 decades at CBRE advising some of the biggest private equity and hedge funds in the world. What exactly does your role look like day to day, and how does it differ from what most people imagine a commercial real estate broker does?
One thing I love is that the days are rarely the same, and that's some days I can be at my desk all day, some days I'm out all day. It's always a very frenetic pace. But really, real estate is a big tent. If I were to say that my job revolves around anything, it's people, and I'm in a people business, and I love people, and I think you do need to really enjoy people to do it well. And so I'm spending a lot of times seeing people, whether we are touring space or lunch or coffee or meetings or strategy sessions. So I'm around people all the time. Earlier in my career, it's more at your desk putting materials together. But as you continue on, it becomes more about the people than anything else.
Yeah, that's incredible. I've noticed that as well, as I'm entering my time in real estate, that it's really about the relationships that you build along the way, which is really important. And it's been fun cultivating those relationships as well, either with people amongst my age or even with people generations above me. So it's really fun to experience that.
Yeah. Well, I would say being mentored and being a mentor are really two of life's great gifts. On either side, it's really a great thing to have and have those relationships.
Were you mentored? Do you have a specific mentor in mind that stands out to you during your time when you were maybe in my shoes or when you were in college?
Not in college, but when I started at CBRE, there's a woman here, Marianne Ty, who's I always call her the LeBron of real estate. She's been, you know, at the top of the game for longer than anybody's been at the top of the game, and I was fortunate enough to meet her early on, and we hit it off. And she's never been a day to day mentor, but whenever I'm at some sort of crossroads or really need guidance, she's always been there for me, and I'm very fortunate to have had that.
The LeBron of real estate. I mean, to be called that, that's a big title to hold. So
She
that's
deserves
incredible.
it.
I love that. And have
Yeah.
you been at CBRE now your entire career, or have you jumped around to other firms? I think I know the answer, but I'd love for the audience to kind of hear that.
Yeah. So I started at a company called Insignia ESG, which was then bought by CBRE. So I've been in the same physical office for my entire real estate career, which is now 26 years. And CBRE is the largest real estate firm in the world. It's the largest real estate firm in New York, and it's been great, and built up a lot of relationships over many years. So it continues to be the best place for me to have my practice.
Do you, not a lot of people stay at the companies that they originally start at. Why else do you think that is? Is it the company culture? It's amazing that you have those relationships, but there has to be something else that the company offers to allow you to really thrive in that environment. Is there anything else that stands out within the company structure that really allows you to thrive in that environment?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, there are friction costs with leaving. So, if I have different partners with different clients, and if I were to go, some I would keep and some I would lose. So, there's a cost to going. Um, but I think part of it is the firm, and then part of it is your situation at the firm. So, I'm the global head of this group, the AIP group, and it's just a good spot for me here. And who knows what it would be like somewhere else. So there's really no reason for me to move. Not to mention my office is above Grand Central Terminal, which for a Westchester commuter is the best thing ever. So that factors in as well.
That's huge. I mean, the commute alone is definitely something to factor in always. So I know that based upon my dad's commute, he literally sits in traffic an hour and a half both ways. So I get that.
Yeah.
Your team focuses on alternative investment firms, hedge funds, venture capital, private equity. What makes this client base different from traditional office tenants?
So I love my client base. What I find is, and this was more luck than choosing, but what's great is usually if you have an alternative investment firm, there's either one king or queen. That person is making the decisions. They'll have a C suite around them. But let's say you're representing a law firm, there may be a board or, board of directors or people coming in and out. And one lives in the city and one's in New Jersey and one's in Westchester. So, where does the office go? And there's more politics when there's more people who are involved in it. Um, when I've gotten the number one to understand that I have their best interests in mind at all times, and that I'm the right person to help them with their real estate, that's sort of it. I'm their person, and it's not more complicated than that. And then also in terms of recommendations, if a number one from one firm recommends me to a number one at another firm, again, you sort of skip the longer process and political process of having to, deal with a ton of people. And I find the smarter the person is, the more quickly they can understand the value prop, the more quickly they can understand the value differentiation between one advisor and another advisor. And it's just more efficient. I'm a big efficiency guy, and I find this part of the market. I was just the other day, I was dealing with someone outside my normal sphere, and a partner internally was mentioning to me that he thought that I was being a little too abrupt and sort of curt. And what I realized was I'm just used to a certain speed, and the people that I deal with are used to a certain speed. And the lawyers that you deal with on these deals, everyone's getting to everything immediately with great urgency and great care and dedication and focus. And I realize when I go outside my sphere that that isn't necessarily the way that the rest of the world functions. So I like to stay in my space.
Well, I think also in real estate, a deal can die in literally 2 seconds if you don't stay on top of it and if you don't get it from point A to Z in that time period. So that mindset and that type of shift that you're in, I think is hard to really step out of because I feel like people are framed to behave that way because you really don't want that deal to die. You really need it to survive throughout the entire process. So I feel like a lot of people are behaved or shifted to that mindset, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, there's an expression, time kills all deals. At some point the deals will die. But look, sometimes you need the added time, and the deal should die for it's not the right deal for the group, and then you don't want to do it. But when they do want to do it, if you truncate the amount of time it takes, it lowers the risk of getting the space.
Absolutely. Completely agree. You sit at the intersection of finance and real estate. How are investment firms thinking about office space differently today compared to 10 or 15 years ago? People are always discussing COVID as the differentiator and different economic outcomes and things that are happening currently. But right now, what are you noticing differently versus years past?
Well, I would say since COVID, groups have had to reassess sort of first principles and say, what is the point of being in the office? How important is it? Can you work remotely? And again, it's different in different parts of the market, but in my part of the market, basically what the principals of these firms have said is, hey, we're in a fantastically competitive marketplace. We need every advantage we can get. And one advantage is being together physically. So, if you don't want to be together physically, you're not willing to do that, this probably isn't the right place for you to work. So my industry is back. I would say a big thing that's changed is, let's say you had a tenant that could be on two smaller floors. They'd rather be on one larger floor now, because if you're going to come in, the reason to come in is to be around people. So you want to make sure that you're going to have office space that um, enables people to be together. So that's the real focus of the firms that I represent, is making sure that you have space that people want to come into, they're excited to come into. These firms that the talent retention and talent recruitment is fierce, and having great space is one of the carrots that firms can put out there to attract the absolute best of the best talent.
Absolutely. And company culture right now, I feel like is so important. And I feel like the talent that people do derive from out there really does matter to bring about the talent and the spirit in that space. So I think people do really seek that in a in-person working environment. So agreed. New York has always been a hub for financial firms. From your vantage point, what keeps these firms committed to New York despite remote work and rising costs?
Yeah. So now it's not that I've gotten smarter. I've just been through a bunch of cycles. And so it always feels like this is it. After 9/11, it was, why would people stay in a city? It just seems like the most dangerous place. And COVID felt like, this is it. How can you be in such a populated area? People won't do it. But, part of it, watching it, is even through your um, generation and graduates, everyone wants to come to New York. So if everyone still wants to be here, and it's a special city, the amount of people and just the culture and the ability to, every day I can go have lunch with just a ton of different people, that if you're in a different environment, it's just hard to physically be around this many people. So what also winds up happening is, I saw it with tech. San Fran had the tech, and then when the companies got to a big enough size that they needed to sell to companies, other companies, like when Facebook got big enough where it needed to, its customers were other companies, the sales force had to be in New York. So the companies wind up coming to New York because that's where the sales forces are going to be to interact with the other companies. So there's just a whole ecosystem here that's extremely difficult to replicate. There's obviously some other cities that do it okay, and others that are trying to do it. West Palm with Related right now, and Miami, and some other spots, and they may do all right. But New York is, I'm long on New York. I think it'll always be a special place to do business.
All bets on New York. New York is king. I also think when everyone was afraid when the mayor was elected and all that, I heard from our CEO at our company at Sirhan, he was basically settling us all down by saying we had 9/11, we had, the recession, we had Hurricane Sandy, we had COVID, we had all these things that occurred, and now we have this mayor. All right, we can handle another, back step in our trajectory, and we can move on and move forward and continue on. And there's things that have happened in the past that were worse, and New York will always survive. And that's kind of the message that I think a lot of New Yorkers need to hear at this moment, that it's something that will always prevail. So,
Yeah, we had a bunch of clients asking about it. We had one that put the deal on hold for a few weeks and then ultimately elected to move forward. So there was a lot of talk, but I don't think it didn't really impact people's decision making.
no, and also there's only so much that one individual in office can really end up enacting or really end up doing in their power to change the city and all
That's
that.
the hope. That's the hope.
Well, yeah, we'll see. With over 1,000 transactions under your belt, what have you learned about what really drives a successful deal?
I would say the beginning of the process is the most important part of the work, making sure that interests that it's clear what the objectives are, and making sure that the client understands that. So for example, a lot of my clients will know the landlords just because they're well-to-do and they run in the same social circles. But if someone reaches out to their landlord early in the process and says, "Hey, I'm in your building and I'd like to stay," it hurts leverage, right? Because now, if those people really are friends and then they have a conversation about staying and then they leave, you sort of leave them at the altar. That's not what friends would do to each other. So making sure it's all, the process is the same either way, whether someone renews in space or goes to new space. You need to fully explore the market, understand what your options are, understand all the ramifications, obviously the financial ramifications, how you'd operate there, layout wise, headcount wise, and then the more qualitative stuff, like what does this building convey about our company? Who are the other tenants in the building? What does the lobby look like? What do the amenities look like for my employees? So you sort of like put that all in the suit together, figure out what the best options are. The one thing you do not want are false starts. If you have a false start, you can really hurt your credibility in the marketplace. Other groups won't believe you. So like right now, the market's very tight. If a landlord doesn't think that you have the ability to see a deal all the way to fruition, or that the tenant won't sign the lease, they're going to go with the other group that they think is more credible. So you need to be credible. So setting up a process to ensure that everything you do is credible is really what I found to be the most important thing.
Yeah, having preparation, having all your ducks in a row, financials, everything like that, I feel like is key, especially with tenants and operators and stuff like that.
Mhm.
When you walk into a negotiation for a major transaction, what's your philosophy going in? We talked about preparation, but is there some sort of leverage that you have, or a philosophy or psychology that you're kind of using to your advantage?
So, for my own situation, most of the deals that I'm doing are in buildings. As you get to the higher end buildings, they're owned by a smaller and smaller group of landlords. So I'm dealing with the same people over and over and over again. Whereas in other real estate situations, you may deal with that landlord one time and then never again. So I've got a bunch of competitive advantages here. My volume, I have done so many deals with all these people that I know what they've given away in the past on other deals. So whereas someone else may be starting the negotiation thinking that if they get to here, this is best case scenario, I know that they've gotten to here and can sort of start my conversation there. Hey, I know you've given this another time, and here's why we need even more than that. Um, so I think that's a big part of it. And also the volume is very helpful. It's not just the tenant, that when the landlords are dealing with me, that they know that there's other deals that are right behind it. And so if they, just for example, if they say they're going to do X and then they do Y, that's going to hurt them, because then I'm going to say, next time you say you're going to do X, that I just can't believe that because you said that and you didn't do it. So there's a degree of them needing to ensure that they're doing what they say they're going to do for me specifically, just because of the amount of activity and other. I always have the next tenant that they really want in their building.
Right.
So it's a big part of it.
Think there's also like a level of trust and also communication between the building and yourself. I think that it's in their best interest to almost over communicate and almost want to keep those relationships at such a high level, because otherwise you can find so many other options within the city and other buildings that are even next door that work better for your clients even. So it's
Yeah,
that level of transparency.
that's right. And also, I think what happens is you'll be, when you do this as long as I do, you'll have relationships that are just higher up the food chain. So sometimes you'll get stuck on something that doesn't make sense, or you don't feel like you're being heard in the way that you need to be in this particular instance. And I think a differentiator between people is the ability to pick up the phone and go to the top and speak to the decision maker and have a real conversation. And it doesn't necessarily always lead to getting what you want. They'll have reasons why they can or cannot give, but at least that way you've flushed it out fully. You've gotten your answer, and then you can act accordingly. If it's a deal breaker where you wanted something that you can't get, then you do something else. But often if you can get it, then you can move forward.
Don't you respect it more when someone picks up the phone and they decide to actually flush out a conversation over the phone, speaking it out, kind of having that conversation rather than having that text to text kind of conversation? I feel like that's such a better way of handling business. I kind of respect
Yours,
that more.
yeah, you're so right. And part of that is a generational thing. I find is people. I once asked Marianne for something, and she said, "All right, I'm seeing them next week." And I said, "Can you just call them now? It's kind of time sensitive." She's like, "I can call them now, but if you want the thing that you're telling me that you want, being in person will up the chances significantly." So it's almost like in person is better than phone. Phone is better than text is better than email. But when you really need something and you really need to connect with someone, in person's best. And it is lost. I mean, the amount of miscommunicating that goes on in texts is just, it's crazy. And I think people can be lazy, and it's just easier to fire off it. Well, they think it's easier to fire off a text, but it actually leads to more miscommunication, and it takes more time than if you just pick up the phone. I do lately. I like FaceTiming people. If you can't get in person, then seeing someone's face, having the conversation that way, is a different level of intimacy, and it just works better.
Yeah, I don't even think to utilize FaceTime in business, but honestly, it's a great idea. I think people sometimes hide behind their phones, text instead to handle business, and sometimes it's honestly you really get their true colors when you really can see their face and really see what they're up to. So it's a much better method, I think.
Yeah, lately, sometimes instead of leaving a mess, nobody likes voicemails anymore, right? Like you don't
No,
leave.
I don't feel like anyone listens.
Yeah, nobody listens. So sometimes I will leave a voice note in a text. But lately, what I've done a few times that I find is really effective is I'll just take a quick video and send it to them. And again, they can see my face, they can hear my voice, how I'm saying it, and it's just a different level of familiarity for them to respond to. It works.
Yeah, and
Send some videos around.
it's personal. It's I think that's the bottom line,
Yeah, that's right.
and it's unexpected. Commercial real estate can be extremely cyclical. How do you personally stay steady and strategic when markets shift dramatically?
Um, well, I am at a point in my career where sort of the year to year doesn't really matter. It's just overall. So um, I don't care when any transactions happen. I just want to represent my clients to the best of my ability and get them what they want to the best of my ability. So there are definitely times where it's more challenging to do deals than others, on both ends, when the economy is not good, or COVID, or 9/11, where everything's frozen. Um, or right now, the market is so hot on the high end that there's very little space. So it's making it challenging to do transactions for groups just because they're not finding the space that they want. So um, you don't worry about your own timeline, and you just make sure that you're giving them the best guidance you can.
Absolutely. That's the best thing that you can do for your clients is giving them the most honest and transparent.
And just to that, Warren Buffett has this expression called long-term greedy. And what he basically would say is, forgetting my own um, ethics, what's in my own selfish monetary interest, is advising you to the best of my ability. Because over the long run, that's going to keep the most clients, that's going to get you the most referrals, that's going to lead to the most business in your career. So forgetting ethics, just long-term greedy. And I think people respect when you explain that to them, because in addition to trying to be as ethical as I can be, once I've explained to someone that it's in my own economic interest to only give them the best advice that I possibly can, it's calming for the user to fully understand that.
Especially in a commission-based industry like this, where we all are basically, for the most part, gaining our salary from commission only. So that's the structure that we are all playing off of, and building those relationships for the long run only are going to help us. So that's the best advice that someone can get.
That's right.
You're also known internally for mentoring young professionals. What qualities do you look for in the next generation of brokers or advisors?
Well, I think you want to start with the qualities that are hard to switch. So meaning you need people that are ethical. You need people that are nice. I don't want to be around people that are jerks. I like being around people that are kind to everyone. If I see someone rude to a waiter or waitress, I'm just, I have like a visceral physical reaction to that. I'm like, I don't want to be around this person.
Worst traits.
Right. So you start with those traits because those are hard to change. Then, before we started recording, we were talking about someone who's worked super hard, and some of that can be learned, but some of that is innate. You want to find someone who's hungry. I will say, I found hungry to not be necessarily correlated to someone's economic position at the time. I've seen people who don't have a lot work hard and not work hard, and I've seen people who come from extreme means not work hard and work super hard. So there's both on both ends. So I'm not a big believer in, well, what's their background? And I've heard people say, chips on shoulders puts chips in pockets, and it does to some people, and it does not to some people. So again, I look for the people. I like people that are again that enjoy other people. You don't want to have someone do something that doesn't come naturally to them. My favorite Twitter follower, Naval Ravikant, has this whole thing um, about how it's you want to do things that feel like work to others but play to you. Being around people energizes me. If you're introverted, being around people saps energy from you. So you want to match up people with the tasks they're going to be doing that come naturally to them, that they like, that they're invigorated by.
My biggest takeaway from that is the fact that you kind of walk in meeting people, either young or whatever stage of life that they are in, with kind of like a blank, open mind, which I think is so great, whether they come from a background with privilege or not. It's great that you kind of have that mindset, because I feel like sometimes people in companies like CBRE or others that have such great, backgrounds and build such great reputations sometimes do factor that into their decision making. So it's really great that that type of mindset is what you frame your decision making on.
I appreciate that. Not everyone shares that, but a lot of people do. And I do tell this to my kids all the time too. It has to be genuine. You're not going to like everyone that you interact with, and you don't have to like everything about them, but there's almost always something about the person that you're interacting with that you find interesting, that you'll want to ask follow-up questions on, and you want to hone in on those things. Because again, if you're faking it, like pretending that you're interested in something you're not, everybody knows, and the relationship's over, and I'm a terrible liar and faker. But I'm really good that when I am enthusiastic about something, people can tell that I genuinely am. And it's appealing to people when the person that they're interacting with is genuinely interested in them.
Right. I think people who are genuinely excited to be around other people can't fake that type of emotion or can't fake the enthusiasm. At least I know I can't. I have that type of ability as well, to be genuinely excited to be around others, and that's what makes me kind of that extrovert. And that, I think, is what makes people in real estate stand out, and that's what you need in this industry. So it's really a skill that I think is kind of innate as well. That
Agreed.
takes,
There's tricks to it, but a lot of it is, all these things are just a mix, right? Everything is not nature or nurture. They're just a mix of these things.
yeah, absolutely. I always say 50% is what you can take from learning in the books for real estate, and 50% is also personality. It's what really allows you to connect with that client as well.
Yeah.
So our
I will say again, it's a big tent. So like there are people here who are the analytical engines of the big deals. So CBRE has a 40-person consulting group that is processing the numbers. Those people, and a lot of them have great personalities, but it's not as important there for that role as it is for me and my role. So real estate's such a big there's so many different types of jobs in real estate. It's really important for people to understand that what might sound like the right skill sets for real estate is really a subset, broker versus owner versus landlord rep versus, consultant. So there's just a lot of different ones.
Yeah, I would say definitely in sales though, that 50-50 is probably my takeaway. But
Yeah.
I completely agree in the fact that there's definitely other subsets where you can kind of find your niche and find your position that makes the most sense for your personality type.
Yes. Yes.
Going back to your kids for a second, you've built a huge career, but also you're a husband, father, and involved in other philanthropic charities and stuff like that. So, how do you balance a demanding industry? Because I do believe that real estate is a 24/7 type job. I feel like we're always on our phones with life outside the office as well.
So again, in my narrow broker view, not just any job within the industry, but if you're the relationship, broker person, it is definitely 24/7. But at the same time, I don't have anyone telling me when to come in, when to leave, when to go on vacation. I can do really whatever I want, whenever I want. And at the same time, and my kids are getting a little bit older, if a client wants to talk at 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning, I let's go. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to advance the ball. I just want progress, and I like I like progress. So wheels in motion, things happening. So my personal and professional life are completely juxtaposed, and all my friends know exactly what I do for a living, and I represent many of them. And people I've met through work, many of them are friends, and um, I think you can do it all. There's a lot of time in the day to do all these things. For the charity, um, it's great. It's like a palate cleanser. Instead of dealing with corporate real estate in New York City, you're really doing some stuff where you can see. I picked a local charity to focus on because I can see the impact of it firsthand. Backyard Sports, which I'm president of the board of, and just what these people do. They're just angels. And I've been to many of the events and see the kids able to do things they normally wouldn't be able to do. The parents be able to relax in a way, with, let's say, special needs children that require just a lot more of them, and they're able to relax while their kids are getting or having fun with other kids. So it's just amazing stuff. And it's great. I do think there's the give a job to a busy person. That certain people can really do a lot with their day and cram it all in. And I definitely find, again, I'm energized by being busy. When I have too much time on a weekend, that's where I find myself feeling lethargic and not great. So I like it all packed.
I resonate with that. I thrive off of being busy as well, so completely understand that position. Would you be able to go into more on what that charity looks like? I feel like that is something that a lot of our audience would love to hear more about. Sounds very interesting.
Well, anyone who wants to donate, backyardsportscares.com. It's great. And what happened was I knew someone who was involved in it, and I got involved. It started out where the school had their basketball hoops destroyed in a storm, and the kids who were normally just hanging out before school playing were now hanging out doing not great stuff. And the guy who ran the charity said, here's what it costs to buy new hoops and goalposts. And it wasn't a big number, relatively speaking. And then he took me back a few weeks later and seeing all the amount of impact that these two hoops and the two goals had and how many kids were enjoying it. And, a lot of schools about childcare. At this particular school, the parents just have to go to work. They have to drop off their kids at school, and they're either going to do good stuff with that time or bad stuff with that time. And I just got addicted to be able to sort of share that kind of good, is really gratifying.
It really is. It sounds like an amazing charity. So great work, and I really do commend you for that.
Thanks. And I'd also say a lot of the people that at these financial firms, if you just watch movies, it seems like everyone is, Gordon Gekko or Boiler Room, where they're just out for themselves. But I find, many unbelievable quality people who are doing all kinds of good in the world, in addition to doing their own job for their own benefit.
Absolutely. It's really moving to be able to have that type of ability to give back when you have that ability to do so. So, well, that's really wonderful. My last question for you is, if you could give or go back and give your younger self one piece of advice on career advice or anything like that, what would it be?
I think that there's a shift over time where at sort of your career stage, you want to expose yourself to everything that you can, so you can see again, like, what works for you, what comes naturally for you, how does it work? And then as you go through your career, you actually want to do the opposite. At least for me, what I found in others is that I need to say no to more now. I know what my highest and best use is. And before, I would try all different types of things and different ways of doing things. And now, really, in order to have the days that you and I are talking about, where you're so busy with quality stuff and getting to the husband, father, kids, every getting to everything, you need to say no to more, right? So again, I saw this thing online. Naval Ravikant was saying the word freedom is one of his core principles. But when he was younger, it was freedom to be able to afford this vacation, this restaurant, to do all these things. And now freedom is still the word for him, but it's freedom from needing to be in a certain place at a certain time, freedom from expectations of things that he no longer wants to do. So same word, opposite meaning, and still the most important word. So things change, and you just have to adapt as your life and career progresses.
Yeah, it sounds extremely liberating to eventually get to that point. And it's something actually that I've heard in the past from Ryan Serhant as well, as something that, when you're young in your career, you should be saying yes to most opportunities just so that you can get that experience, hands-on experience, whatever you can do to really accelerate your career. But then eventually you have the ability to say no, and no is okay as well. I think that's a word that people are sometimes scared to really say out loud, but it's okay to shy away from certain opportunities because you have that ability to do so, because you built a career and a whole life for yourself to get to that point in your life where you can say no, and it's wonderful. I think it is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. Well, Ben, thank you so much for coming on Disrupt for Good today. I can't thank you enough. It's been such a pleasure having you on and hearing all of your time at CBRE and all of your charity work and everything that you've done. It's been such a pleasure. So thank you again for coming on today. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Dylan. Always fun talking to you.
Absolutely. All right.